On this episode of
Whoa,
The
whoa,
Startup
whoa,
Life,
whoa, whoa. What are you doing?
I'm starting the show.
It's my show.
You said I could be on the show.
I say you can be on the show, but not take over the show. Look, I know this is your company, and I get that. However, you gotta let me have something. But go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kenda Lawson, founder and CEO of OWLS, and The Startup Life begins now.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome, Startup Nation. I hope you're ready to receive some value today. As always, the Startup Life is brought to you by OWLS. If you're a high-impact organization, school, small business, or nonprofit, and you are in need of professional development or strategy in your organization, you can reach OWLS at 901-857-4818 or visit our website at www.askowlsllc.com. All right, Startup Nation. So today we have a guest, founder and CEO of OWLS, Kenda Lawson. She's the boss of both my professional life and personal life. She doesn't like that joke.
I don't.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, are you ready to give some value to our listeners?
I am. I'm glad to be on the show.
Okay, so first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you created OWLS.
Well, I started off my professional career as an educator, worked in the classroom. I had some really great students. I had some awful ones too, but that wasn't really a part of, that didn't factor into my decision to do this.
All right.
Basically, I saw my life in the classroom where I had a lot of control and a lot of success. And I began to think to myself, what would it be like if I could expand my sphere of influence just a little bit? So I began to get into administration, but didn't like that very much. I knew that it would ultimately land me behind a desk and in meetings, and that's not my favorite thing to do. So basically I ended up just taking an alternate path. I decided that I was going to bet on myself, step out of the classroom, and see if there were teachers in other places that I could help. And since then, the business has grown to include not just clients who are educators, but who are small businesses, anybody basically looking to innovate and needing a team around them that gets it, that gets the goal of the organization, that gets where they're going, and understands the information and skills that are necessary in order to get there.
Now, I know OWLS is your first company, but was it your first idea for a company?
Absolutely not. I think back on so many ideas I had, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way, where it's like, man, that was my idea. I thought of that like 8 years ago. And we just really, never have the guts to stick it out and go for it. I remember actually being in my 20s, like early 20s. I actually started a website called 20something.com, and it was really all about all of these things to do in every city when you're 20-something, right? What parties are popping, what restaurants you should go to, like this really awesome kind of travel website. And actually, I started that when I was really early on in teaching, that sort of thing. I thought it was fun, but I really never followed through. And so, nothing happened with it.
What do you wish you would have known before you started a business?
Honestly, how hard it is.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, I don't want to say it's certainly not impossible and that sort of thing, but there's all these there's these mistakes and missteps and things that you're going to have. And of course, it's easy to say if I could go back and do it all over again, I would try to avoid those things. But I don't necessarily feel that way. I think mistakes offer a detour. They take you somewhere that you needed to go and give you some sort of experience that you needed to have. And ultimately, you get where you're going. So honestly, I would probably tell myself, where I was going a little earlier, to just take that leap of faith to go for it.
What did you learn from your worst boss you ever had? Have you had a few bad bosses?
Pretty fortunate in terms of bosses. I think with every boss, what happened was I learned some great things from them, and then I learned some things not to do. So the worst situation I can remember being in as an employee was I used to work at Office Max. I was actually the manager of the print and copy center.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I know. This is actually right, but I was going through a certification program before I started teaching. This was like right after graduation. And I landed this job, and it was great. And I had a manager on the other side. We sort of worked in conjunction with each other. I saw him get passed over for these positions and be really, really loved by the staff, but not really advancing in his career. And so ultimately, I think he decided to leave, and we got replaced with another boss. And, I think he was coming in when all of the employees had this like great and really profound loyalty to the former manager.
Okay.
And so I guess, I don't know, he was trying to assert himself or something, and that didn't work out too well. In the beginning, I think he just took on this role where it's like, well, I'm in charge of all of this, and I'm the boss, and you are, but how do you run 500,000 copies in 2 hours? Or how do you get this job collated, and how do you do the NCRs and whatever it is that we were doing, and so what I learned from that is to stay in your lane, surround yourself with good people,
nice.
And trust them to do their job, and don't micromanage everything.
Yeah, I know a lot of people definitely don't like to be micromanaged.
Oh, I hate to be micromanaged.
Right.
It's one of the things where, there's so many things about teaching that I absolutely loved, but I really just like to do my own thing, and that's one of the great parts about being an entrepreneur is that I can wake up every morning and decide, what's on my agenda for today. And if I don't get something done, there's nobody beating me up but myself and you.
What? What are you saying?
Because you add stuff to my agenda.
Okay.
You tell me what I have to do, which is great. You're there motivating me, keeping me to it.
And vice versa. Don't think this is just one-sided. Okay, next question. How do you use social media? Be honest.
Don't. I happen to have this great person on my team, and this goes again with, staying in your lane. It's not necessarily my thing. I think the biggest hurdle for me to overcome is really this idea that, is trusting people to care. I don't know. I'm a, very, very early millennial at the end of Generation X. And I didn't necessarily grow up with this idea that, everybody wants to hear every thought that pops out of your head. And so it's been a really interesting journey for me to start to open up and, trust people to care what's going on in my life. I guess I always had it in my head that, people are secretly criticizing, that sort of thing. And you actually really have taught me a lot about that people,
What? I taught you something?
Yes, that
Well, I feel
you inspire
honored.
people and you motivate them, or you give them ideas, or there's people out there that are actually craving positive things on Facebook. And I've always been, I do certainly prescribe to the idea that, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all.
Fair enough.
But I also limit myself because it's like, well, I would share this, but I don't look like it's bragging and that sort of thing. And so I'm just starting to realize that, it helps people to see successes as well as failures. I try to make sure I'm pretty transparent about sharing both.
That's actually a nice segue because our next question for you, and I really think Startup Nation can really get some value from, is what did you learn from your biggest failure?
Not to give up. I think if people look at you and they see the success or they see where you are right now, they don't know the path that it took to get there, right?
Right.
They don't understand.
We talk about that all the time, don't
Absolutely, right? So, it's easy, to just think that this sort of popped out of nowhere, and you don't see the long hours, the questions that you have, and the times where you feel like, you might not make it. And so the biggest thing that I've learned is the lesson that many things that in my life have taught me, which is that, this won't break you. It's not fun right now. It's not enjoyable to go through, but you'll keep going and you'll make it. And so if I ever come off as cocky or overconfident or successful or anything else, then you have to see the story that led to it and understand that strictly comes from a place of knowing that if I've weathered so many storms with God on my side, with family, and with the confidence in myself, I'll get through this too.
So, Kenda, how did you get the idea or the concept for OWLS?
Oh wow, I feel like this is your story.
What?
I've heard you tell a story about how I called you that day.
Oh.
Well, I was at work one day, and we had a professional development where students were out and teachers were in. I got called. I was asked to present this idea for this literacy initiative that we were going to have to do in every class. So I knew I was going to get some pushback from people taught in the sciences or mathematics, because of course we focus on literacy. Now I do want to plug here to say that literacy is really the responsibility for all people, because there is historical literacy and financial literacy. And all of this really contributes to having this student who's literate. And basically that's the pitch that I made that day, and it wasn't very well received. So I was in the middle of the teacher sort of yelling at me about how I was being crazy, because he was probably going to go get cussed out the next day, and he's having problems with the kids, and he had just had his curriculum changed, and really nice guy, but just frustrated. And I think that day I really had one of those moments where it's like I could just let this go, but no, I'm not going to do that. So I very professionally and politely really made the case for how we have to meet our students where they are, and we understand that there's a need for this because everybody's always talking about how their kids can't read and this sort of thing. And it's like, okay, we have a responsibility to do something about that, and this is what we're going to do. And from there, I actually was approached by someone who's, the Dr. Parker, who was working as a consultant, and she asked me, what I was doing in that district, and I think I must have said something like, church trying to make a difference, and I was frustrated too. Even though I had managed to keep my poise throughout it. From there, really, it just I got the opportunity to do a couple of days, provide a service for some people who were in need of that sort of thinking, and they were actually prepared for that kind of thought initiative around literacy in their school. And so it's strange, like the story in the Bible about Jesus, sort of preaching in his home country versus going abroad.
Gotcha.
And sometimes, people are just, a little bit more receptive. I had the opportunity to do that the first year, and, I really haven't looked back since then. So really the opportunity found me, and I guess I wanted to say to the audience on this is that, you'd be surprised where opportunities come from. They can be unexpected, but you got to be ready when they present themselves.
Absolutely. Got to be ready when opportunity calls, right?
Right.
Okay, so what was the best piece of advice you've ever gotten, and what was the worst?
Okay. The best piece is actually pretty easy. I've been quoted as saying this before. I'm not sure if it's evolved over time or if these are exact words, but I remember being a kid and with a lot of stuff going on in our family, in our household, and really always seeing education as a way out. So I had an uncle who told me, summed it up very nicely, who said that, people will pay you for what you know. And again, the second part, I'm not sure if he said it or if it just sort of got added as we went, but I came to understand that, you'll also be punished with what you don't. So that, that ignorance, just like, how they say that ignorance of the law isn't, freedom from the law, right? Just because you don't know something doesn't mean it doesn't hurt you or doesn't affect you. Like that, I feel like that's probably the worst advice you can get, which is like what you don't know won't hurt you. Gotcha. It absolutely will, And so I've always been a person to try to seek out information, to try to, know as much as possible in order to make great decisions.
Did you already answer the worst part? Because I heard you kind of pepper that in there, but I wasn't sure that was...
You know what? I didn't think about it, but I guess I did. I had something totally different in mind.
Well, share that then. Go ahead.
I guess the worst advice, I guess, it's along those lines. Mm-hmm. But it's, people who want to protect you. They want you to take the safe route on in things. And they think they're, pretty much telling you to do what's practical.
Right.
I mean, I think about it. I've, until recently, which is crazy. It's like, we had Zoe and started a family, bought a house. Then I decided to do something crazy, right? It's totally impractical.
Don't remind me.
But, I don't know. Maybe if I had, been less practical along the way, we would have gotten to this point sooner. I don't know.
How do you like being on the show?
It's been fun. I thought I was going to be nervous, but it's been good.
Okay. Are we doing the company proud?
You are. You always do.
We're trying to. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to break. And once again, you're listening to The Startup Life. If you are a teacher looking for great resources, look no further than OWLS e-commerce store on Teachers Pay Teachers. Our store name is Teaching with OWLS. Enjoy great lessons based on stories from great authors such as Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour and Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death. And don't worry, teachers, all lessons are Common Core aligned. Welcome back, Startup Nation. Let's continue. So, Kenda, we was talking over the break, and it's something that I really think we should share with our listeners. Go for it.
It goes back to that idea about, how what you don't know can hurt you.
Okay.
We see this a lot in small businesses. There's plenty of information that sort of circulates in these closed circles, and it can be really difficult to break in. And so it's why it's really important. Networking is just essential for an entrepreneur, but also professional development, trying to learn as much as you can about your industry as well as other industries, because there's always more out there to get, but everything that you're missing, everything that you don't know exists is a missed opportunity.
Kenda, we've been on this life of entrepreneurship. What's one of those misconceptions people have about running a company or being an entrepreneur?
I think a common misconception is that business life is easy, where it's just like money raining and, cars that like we're rappers or something. I don't know. I just think that, people think that, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to put my name on something. It's going to be awesome and great. And I won't have to work. And, we've done this. We've, worked with different clients and that sort of thing who thought they were going to start restaurants so they could spend time with their families.
Oh,
or,
boy, don't remind me. Don't remind me.
Or, just other misconceptions that, that somehow this life is easy. But, the other side of that is people who think that this life is really, really difficult and that it's impossible. And I mean, it's really important to obviously go in with your eyes open, but don't shut them, closed either, and don't, refuse to see the potential that you have. Whatever idea it is that's in your heart and that nags you when you're sleeping, it's fighting to come out. And so it's not impossible to live this life either. The best things are to learn as much as possible and be as prepared as possible, but also understand that, you're not going to be prepared for everything. And that you can get through it. It's not only is it possible, but it's what you're intended to do. So I just think it's not impossible, but it's not easy either.
I hear that. That adversity piece is something that a lot of people, when they delve into entrepreneurship, they really don't pay attention to, or they really don't acknowledge. So I'm really glad you said that.
Well, I don't know. If you thought you were going to get into this unchallenged without opposition, I mean, hopefully you get in a great space where there's no competition. Well, that's an argument for innovation.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
To make sure you do that, and then at least you can create your own space with no opposition. But even then, you're gonna face adversity. You're gonna face people where even when you pitch it to them and explain the idea, they're gonna tell you that you're crazy and that nobody's ever gonna want this, and that this is not gonna sell. That this is a niche kind of product or something like that. There's always going to be naysayers, and at the very least, if that's the only adversity you face, then you're in good shape. The least that people can do is tell you no, because every no, I would just ask for some sort of feedback. No, because and that gives me an idea about how I'll pitch it differently the next time. But it's very important to be aware that that's going to happen. I mean, there's been so many times over the course of this whole journey that we've encountered roadblocks and hurdles and things like that, and you go around them and you jump over them.
Absolutely. let me ask you this, to kind of a follow-up question. Has there ever been a time where you came really close to saying, I'm done, like I can't do this anymore? And what was it that, that made you say, okay, come on, let's just push a little bit further? Have you ever experienced that before?
Of course. I mean, come on, really? Well, the thing is with the business is that it began great. In fact, in the beginning, I did what a lot of people do. I started off sort of, with my, lack of a better word, my side hustle, So I taught my first
side hustle.
That last year teaching, I used my personal days. I never really take them. I was kind of one of those teachers. I'm never sick. Okay,
Gotcha.
So every day I'm sick, you guys get a break, and I just, that doesn't sit well with me.
Just does something to you, huh?
It's right. It just strikes me in the core.
Classic teacher.
Like, no, I need to be there as many days as I can. Making sure that you guys are not getting off easy. But also that you are learning something that's going to help you. But that left me with some time, and when I was first presented with the opportunity to do some consulting work outside of the classroom, but still in the field of education. And so what I got to do was sort of earn a little extra money on the side, and realize that there actually was a market, that I had a talent for that kind of work. And so it gave me an opportunity to kind of test dip my toe in the water, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But after that, the first year, actually, we got a little spoiled, right? I came out full.
Boy, did we!
I came out full force, and I think there were some months early on there where we did, over 10,000 that month, and it looked like it was going to keep going. But I think the thing that stopped us there in our tracks a little bit later was, I got pregnant,
right,
and
right.
We gave birth to a son, Maximus, and he was born prematurely, and he died in the hospital 6 days later.
Right.
So that was a huge blow, and it gave us an opportunity, to have a conversation about whether or not we wanted to continue to go forward. Because I think for most people, for anybody really, that would be a really fine excuse,
Absolutely.
for quitting,
Absolutely.
And so what helped me in those times is really the team that you have around them, and some of those people on payroll, some of them aren't.
Right.
So you being my husband and talking me through this and encouraging me was helpful. But I also, we have people that we work with, we do contracting with, who obviously had a need for this and saw the potential in the company. But I also had family members who they were just there. And so what I realized was that I would take this opportunity to overcome those odds, those obstacles, because I had people who believed in me, and that it could have easily been an excuse not to continue forward, but it was also
and you say that, but and a lot of people would have gave you that out. Right?
Exactly. I mean, right. I don't mean this in a bad way. I just mean there's going to be times where it's easy to roll over, and nobody could really fault you. I mean, this life isn't easy, and most people wouldn't dare to venture out. And so, you'll hear most people who tell you kind of like, oh, it's okay, you tried. And, if you gave it your best and it didn't work and it's not going to work, that's one thing. But we can't, you can't always let obstacles stop us, and what you really have to do, my process in those sort of situations, is to, really just kind of do an analysis of where I am right now.
Right, absolutely.
Is, where I am right now, is it for now, is it forever? And if it's just for now, then okay, what are the steps I can take to get out, to move forward? And if I can see a way forward, then it's just my nature to keep going in that direction.
Absolutely. I guess let's lighten the mood a little bit. How about that? Explain to our startup nation how we advertise OWLS.
I'm glad to say part of that is by presentation. A lot of what we do is networking. And so part of our advertising is who we are, the content that we provide for people, and the types of things we like to be active in and involved in anyway actually tend to work in our favor. We do a lot of work with Westwood. You do a lot of hands-on work with the students a lot of times. Those are things that we enjoy, that we're invested in, and that sort of thing. But it also speaks to what we do. We design these solutions to problems that arise not just in education and in entrepreneurship, but in so many other areas. I kind of look at it like, if you're not great at math, you got your math guy, right?
Right.
Well, if you have a problem that you're having difficulty finding solutions to, you go to people who like to solve problems, and so that's me. I'm kind of a person that I love puzzles. They fascinate me, and so it's my nature to find the solution to them, and so I can sometimes just be talking to somebody and they say something, and I'm sort of off the cuff, like, hey, have you thought about trying this? And they're like, okay, well, you can see that clearly.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it helps to have like an outside perspective and that sort of thing. Like sometimes people can see things a little bit more clearly than you can, because we kind of get bogged down with a lot of the day-to-day stuff that's going on.
That's a great point.
So it helps to
That's a great point.
these people who come in and can look at things objectively. So part of it is just being who we are. That is advertising in and of itself. But after that, I really have to give a lot of the credit to you, because you do a great job of.
I try my best. I just don't want to get fired.
No, that's not a possibility. I gotta keep you.
Fair enough.
So I know we do a lot of advertising on social media. We try to make our presence, not just heard but felt, by providing free content to teachers and people and services and that sort of thing, so people get an idea of what we do and how well we do it.
Absolutely.
But other than that, it's really a process of making sure that you're out there, that you're public, that it's seen, and you provide a great quality service.
Well, let me provide a follow-up question. That was a great answer, by the way. But if I could ask a follow-up question. Now, a lot of times we get emails about other entrepreneurs asking us, why do you give out so much free content? And because I've seen people like always want people to pay for content. Why do you think that providing free content works for us?
Well, it actually reminds me of a question I had that's, it's really rooted in doubt, about people's intention and about the ability for us all to prosper. And so when I first started consulting, a lot of it was subcontracting work. I worked with the great and awesome Dr. Princess Parker.
Love Dr. Parker. She's awesome.
She is awesome. So, I remember doing a lot of the consulting work and, being young and hopefully talented. And I was talking to her one day and I said, I have to ask you, because, it's my curiosity. I can only fight it for so long.
Gotcha.
Why did you give me this opportunity, knowing that, eventually or at some point I'm probably will become competition? And she said what I hope a lot of great mentors are out here saying to other people, which was that there's plenty of work out here for everybody, and if I spend time trying to block you, that's time that I'm not moving forward. So and that really stuck with me as far as an attitude that it doesn't hurt me to give somebody else a leg up. And the thing that we do, honestly, is try to empower other people.
Absolutely.
And so if you ask me for information, I try to be really good about that, because I like information. I can become become a little overzealous and kind of overshare sometimes. So if people contact me and they ask me a specific question, I try to give them a specific answer, And so if you can take that answer and you can run with it, all the better. I feel better about, our prospects as a society, as a world, as a community even. and it doesn't threaten me. Like it doesn't
Right. Right.
it doesn't hurt me. So even if you're in this exact same space I am, you can't do what I do, and you don't have the same ideas. So that in a real way, you're not competition. You are, you're somebody who can push me. You're somebody who I can bounce ideas off of, but
Gotcha.
you're not a threat. We're not necessarily a threat to each other. So I think that people have to think win-win. So when we give information to people and they are able to utilize it, we're a part of their success story, first of all. And then the other...
Absolutely.
And so then the other thing about that is not just being a part of their success story, but it actually, somebody might come to say, okay, well, look, I think that's great information, but this part of it is not necessarily my skill set. Do you help with that? And then my answer is, of course, is yes, right? Mm-hmm. And I try to empower people to do, as much as you can on your, as you can on your own, but understand that we're here for you and we are a resource for the parts where you need help. So, I had somebody reach out to me recently, who was asking about being incorporated. They wanted to start a nonprofit. And so the question was specifically, do you have any information about that? So I sent, links, resources about the different types of nonprofits, about the process, and that sort of thing. But if that person, should come to the point where they're writing their business plan and they needed some help, because a lot of people find the writing process daunting, or they don't know how awesome they are, and they need somebody else to sort of, like, with that view, come from the outside and say, well, this is what I see from you, and this is what I think is great about your company, and be able to put that into words. Then we're here and we offer that as a service.
What do you look for in an employee at OWLS? Like, what's our ideal candidate for somebody, not just for an ideal candidate for our company, but somebody that kind of fits our culture? What do we look for?
Well, it's interesting. Our culture is diverse. So I would say, you'd have to be talented and different. One of the things that we do is when we work with subcontractors and people who work directly for the company, is everybody takes a survey, and that survey is intended to determine what kind of personality you have and specifically how you work in the work environment. And so what we are actually doing, people might feel the need to try to put things that they think people want to hear. Like, everybody wants to be a people person.
Right.
But if
so
we
cliche.
Yeah,
so
right.
cliche.
And, and that's a great thing. You need people who have those skills. We need, those type of people to sell. We need those people to do customer service, engage with others, and do networking and that sort of thing. So that's great. But we also need, if everybody in your company is a people person, then nobody gets any work done, because they want to stand and talk to each other all the time. And so one of the things that we absolutely crave, and what is an absolutely essential thing, is diversity of thought. So when we take those things, you don't have to try to tell me what you think I want to hear. What I'd like to hear is who you are and what different thing you can bring to the table. So currently, I think we use the 16 personality survey.
Right.
We currently employ 5 different type of personalities, and out of the subcontractors that we work with, we have another 3 different types. But I would actually love to plug in those holes with different people who are going to bring those other skills and that mindset to the table. I think that it'll help us as a company. It'll help us thrive. It'll make us more well-rounded. And what being well-rounded allows you to see in all these different directions, right? So that we don't just want to have a singular focus and a view of everything. Certainly not my view.
What is something that people should know about millennials as entrepreneurs?
Well, I think the thing is about millennials is that they fit very well with the entrepreneurial space. And I think that we're at a marquee moment in history where this will prove to be true. And certainly we need it to prove to be true, is that we need a generation to usher us into the next, whatever it is going to be, whatever the next big market is, whatever the next big industry is. And so millennials are, very well suited for that type of responsibility. People sort of accuse them of being, having a lack of patience and wanting things done now. And there's probably some truth to that. But there is also a sense of urgency that, that hasn't necessarily existed in so many past generations. I think for most generations, there's always been this idea of stability, and something that you can count on. And the thing about stability and a safety net is it can be paralyzing. I mean, it can literally make you stuck where you are. And so the thing about millennials is that they sort of grew up in this time where there was so much going on. You had the bubbles bursting in the 90s for, tech and, Enron scandals and that sort of thing.
Fair enough.
You had a lot of really beloved public figures who, came out, that they had done these, really awful things. And so
we also had 9/11 as well.
Had 9/11, which, sort of caught a lot of people off guard. And so, the thing is about millennials is that they're used to having the rug sort of pulled out from under them. And so I think they sort of grew up without this idea of everything being for sure. And so if nothing's for sure, then you might as well take a chance. And I think that makes millennials perfectly suited for the type of work that I think is going to have to be done. We saw with the election, and I'll say this without becoming too political about the issue itself, but one of the issues in the election was the idea of jobs that were going overseas. And I think a lot of people don't recognize what millennials do in large part recognize when they, graduate from school with these degrees that they were told were safe and, they were going to be able to find these jobs and then didn't find them, is that, it's that the world has changed. And so that some of those jobs that, people are missing, they're not coming back. There's not a need for them. You take automation and so many other things, and what the answer is to that problem is innovation. So that our next economy may look a lot more like exchanging services and goods and ideas and that sort of thing.
Almost kind of like a barter system, if you will.
Precisely.
Gotcha.
That's based more on, you having your job in this, in this singular area. And if that's valuable to me, then I'm going to be looking at, how I can engage in the marketplace with you. So that really will make our own jobs,
Right.
That you'll create your own space, and that a lot of it is going to be creative in nature, and that, there's going to be these scientific advances. But all of that is really based on this idea of, not necessarily being too enamored with what's right in front of you. Right? Of being able to look in old spaces and see new things, right? New ideas. So.
Right. Okay. Have you ever turned down a client, or have we ever had to turn down a client?
It happens rarely. But, usually you have a meeting with them, you want to know what their goals are and that sort of thing. But it is important to make sure that their goals align with, the mission and vision of the company. I mean, you can, early on, you're not going to have a lot of choice in the matter, frankly. You're going to take the money where it comes. As you grow, though, you start to be able to see that for the betterment of your company, for, not just to keep the peace, but to keep your sanity, to make sure that your client is getting a good value, you'll want to make sure that you're the person for that job. And so when I go into schools, or I have an opportunity to do something that I think, might be a little counterintuitive to what the goals are, I'll express that. But if the person, decides that, this is the direction they want to go, I wish them luck and refer them maybe. So it's just really, it's a matter of where you are in this process.
Getting closer to the end. So once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Are you having a good time?
Thank you. I'm having a great time.
Okay.
I hope your listeners are getting something out of this.
Startup Nation always loves value. And I think we're getting really great value from you today, boss.
I don't like that word.
Fair enough. That's why I said
I'm nobody's boss. The thing is like, you run a company. My advice to you, if you run a company, is not to be anybody's boss. I'm a leader. I'm a leader of myself. I'm a leader, hopefully, of others. But that has to happen naturally because I have an idea that makes people want to follow me. But what I try to do is let other people be leaders as well. I don't want to lead a whole bunch of followers because that means I never get any pushback when I maybe have a bad idea or I'm about to make a misstep.
Interesting
And I
point.
don't have anybody who's going to, step out there and catch me. So, it's not for me to be the boss of you. It's for you to be your own boss and, your own leader and for us to work together towards a common goal. So if it's structured that way, I can trust you to do your part while I'm over here doing whatever it is I have to do or whatever I want to do that day.
Got you. Okay. At the end of the day, when you retire from OWLS or you decide to sell OWLS or
Oh man, I'm not retired from that.
or whatever the case may be, how do you want the world to remember you and your company?
Honestly, I want to be remembered as somebody who built something. I mean, we deal a lot with ideas, and so it makes it difficult sometimes to sell. A lot of times, is because people don't really recognize that they have a need for what we do. They know that things aren't going the way that they want them to be. Mm-hmm. They know that they don't necessarily have the answer. Otherwise, they would be solving the problem. But it's really difficult to show that, what you need is a problem solver, and having that person on your team but not on your payroll is the way to go.
Gotcha.
Right? But dealing with ideas like that, it's not enough for me. You know me, I like to build things. I'm like
Absolutely.
The Pinterest queen. I'm hashtag girl
queen.
MacGyver.
You had to get that in there, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Right.
I like to build things, and I make stuff out of whatever's around. And for me, it's a part of that. Putting principles and ideas and critical thinking into action. But I like to do the same thing in the real world. So we talked about the 16 personalities test,
right?
And my personality came back as an architect, right? Mm-hmm. I like to see a space and understand what I could build there, and nobody else has to see it because I can plan it step by step, and I just need you to do this part and trust me, right?
Right.
And so I want to build stuff, I want to build my company up. I see it as this huge consulting firm, sort of like what what lawyers have, where there's different people with different specialties, and we all sort of bring our intellect collectively to bear on a problem for somebody else. But in doing that, we build up these wonderful institutions and organizations into something great. So that where other architects might have buildings, right, where somebody else's name is on it.
Gotcha.
But you can take pride in the fact that I helped build that I offered something to the world and I left a mark on it.
Last question. There's an entrepreneur out there who's on the cusp of giving up. They're getting they've had this adversity, these rough spots. What a piece of advice would you give them?
There's this show that you watch, the Unbreakable Kimmy something.
Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix.
The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix. Absolutely.
That show is fun.
That thing. He watches the show more than I do, but I've caught it sometimes, and I hope it was in the first episode. My best advice, honestly, would be to watch the first episode of that show. Because she says something, and I'm going to mess it up. So, you should go and hear it directly from the source. But it's something like, if you feel like you're going to quit, right? Like you've gone as far as you can go and feel like, and that's an emotional state, really. Most of the time, you feel like I can't go any further. Then she talks about basically doing it for 10 seconds, right?
Right.
Or, it's just, if you could do something for 10 seconds, then you can do it for 10 more seconds.
Right.
And then before you know it, you sort of walked yourself out of the impossible. So before you give up, sort of take a breath, hold it for 10 seconds, then, and try to just trudge forward.
Okay.
And if you can do that for 10 seconds, then you may find you could do it for 10 more seconds. And eventually you'll find that, what you thought was going to be impossible to overcome really, took a minute.
Right. Well, all right, Startup Nation. That's going to be the end of the Startup Life. We hope you got some great value. Kenda,
Bye, everybody.
Kenda, thank you so much for coming on the show. I guess it was an eventuality because,
I guess so.
it's your company and like you kind of
I'm in
fund
the
the show.
building all the time.
Right, you fund the show, so I guess it was only a eventuality that you'll be on the show. But thank you so much. I really think our listeners got some great value today. Any last words?
Whatever the idea is that's eating away at you, and it won't let you sleep at night. Wake up tomorrow and write down like just the first step. Like what would it take? Like what's one step that you could take towards realizing that goal? And then if you can meet that goal in the next week, then wake up a week from now and write another goal. Just step by step. It can be done and you'll be awesome at it.
So that's going to do it for this episode of The Startup Life. We really think Kenda gave you some great value today. She's very passionate about what she does as an entrepreneur, so maybe her passion can really resonate with you and your path to entrepreneurship. If you want to let us know what you think about the show or would like to advertise on our show, let us know in the comments section. Subscribe to our show, as The Startup Life can now be heard on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and SoundCloud. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at OWLS LLC. For a behind-the-scenes look at what we do at OWLS, follow us on Snapchat at OWLS LLC. There you will see our creative process and exclusive content. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life. The Startup Life.